Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to CMJ Canada and our the Haftarah portion. We're studying two portions of Torah and Haftarah and the subsequent Haftarah portions, Mishpatim and Terumah. Let us, as is our tradition, that whenever we gather in the name of the Lord, we bless His name. And this is something we pick up from our Jewish brothers, and it is a good thing to do. Father in heaven, we do bless your name and we honor your word. We pray that that this day, that as we study your divine language, the words that you have spoken into all creation and given to your people, that we will take it to heart. We will see your love and compassion, your instructions and your desire for a better people. And we, Lord, will put this into practice. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. All right, so the first portion of scripture we're going to be looking at, we're still in Shmot, as I'm sure you're all aware of, the book of names, so-called Exodus because of the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation by Jewish people based in Alexandria, who sort of really focused on the story of getting out of Egypt, probably because they were in Egypt. They were free to leave themselves, by the way, at this stage, but they chose not to. The book of names is a book of identity. People are beginning to figure out who they are. And God is revealed in the book of Shemot to have a name, his real name. All the characters of the Bible start the book without names and then slowly get names. And one of the ways that you are identified is by your name, and that is inherently part of your character. And so I think the story of Exodus is probably less more about the Exodus and more about who God really is. And so the next Torah portion, the one we're about to study, just seems to be this long litany of rules. And if you're a good little Protestant, then you would say this is legalism, and probably get upset, which is really not fair. Because oddly enough, I've been living in this country for 25 years, and I have yet to meet a Jewish person who walks around going, "Oh my gosh, I'm under the burden of the Torah." They're actually more like King David, who says, "Oh, how I love your Torah." And that actually is probably a bit of a challenge, I think, probably to some Western theologies. And I think that's something that we should also take a good hard look at. So we have just had the Torah portion Yitro, one of the only two Torah portions that are named after a Gentile. And you get that gives you the big 10 commandments. And there's always that tension. Yeah, tension. Don't you love tension and paradox? Paradox is actually only something that Christians and Jewish people can wrestle with, right? Where two things are true, and you just know that they're that are opposite, and they're true, and you know they're true, but they make no sense to anybody else. For example, you have to die so that you can live. Classic Christian paradox. Okay, that make no sense to secular people, right? God is in total good. No, here's a good Jewish paradox. God's in total control, but you have free will. And that again, the paradox. How are these true? It is true. Okay? And for those that Melody and Gavin will know this from studying the Didache, which is a early Jewish Christian book that teaches Gentiles what to do when they're joining the faith. The first 6 chapters are just lists of rules, just like this, right? And then their conclusion is, if you can do it, you're great. If you can't, do as much as you can. Right? That was never the intention or it was the intention to probably do 110%, but study, have a look, and get the character of God. So the Torah portion starts interestingly. I mean, they all start interestingly. Starts by using this Hebrew sentence. Va'ele Mishpatim, and these are the judgments or the rules. Okay, Mishpatim is from the verb lishvot, to judge. These are the judgments. Asher tasim lefanehem, that I am placing before you. So it's the Mishpatim are not put on you, right? That would be alechem. They're lefanechem. They're put before you, right? They're not imposed. Everyone goes, oh my gosh, these are the rules. God's imposing everything. God says, these are the rules. You pick them up, right? I could be a mean God if I wanted to. I could like put them on you and say, you definitely have to do this. And if I don't do this, I'm going to wipe you off the face of the earth. This is something that is put before you. You actually have to apply them, right? Just you have to apply them for them to have any power whatsoever. You have to apply them. It's a partnership. It's always been a partnership. It's a partnership between God who gives these judgments and a people who accept them, apply them, like them, study them, and put them into practice. When you go through the Bible, there are lots of different words for laws. Mishpatim is judgments. You also get Masaim, things you do, ordinances. You get Torot, laws or teachings, and Chokim, which are also there are also the real word for law. What do they all mean? Well, usually it's not always clear, but usually the rabbis will say Mishpatim are rules that are rational. They're easy to see why those are there. Like thou shalt not murder. That's a given, right? Thou shalt not steal is pretty rational. When you have the chokim, the irrational laws, or the ones that they're not always clear what they're doing. It's not easy to grasp the intention, and that would be something like, right? Don't cook a goat in its mother's milk. Don't mix two types of cloth together. Like rules where you go, don't quite follow why that's so important. We'll do it, but we don't quite understand. And the rabbinic rule is you can interpret a mishpat, but you can't change a chok, right? Something that you don't understand is something that you don't mess with, right? If you go like, I don't understand what this rule is, so well, just do it. You could speak it, but if it looks rational, then interpret it. So things like, thou shalt not murder, or don't think bad thoughts. You understand clearly the concept. Don't kill someone. Now you can apply it a certain way, but if you don't understand, don't cook a goat in its mother's milk. Just don't do it, right? Although it does get interpreted as well, but that was the original rule. Now the word mishpat, where we get mishpatim, is the word for to judge. It's also the word for justice. A lot of these words and rules have the implication that we are doing something that is justice. And of course, if you have the word mishpat and you know that it means justice, and you want to understand a little bit more about justice, what do? You run around the Bible and you find all the places where the word mishpat is, and you can start adding them all together. And of course, one of those places, I'm just going to bring one, is from the Psalms. Why am I bringing a Psalm today? Is because in the first century, the Psalms were they still are, but they were the theology of the Jewish people, right? You believe what you pray. And you might notice that in the New Testament, half the quotes from the Hebrew Bible are from the Psalms, right? They were really intrinsic to describe who Messiah is, who God is, etc. And in Psalm 99, it will have this phrase. It's verse 6. The king is mighty, and he loves mishpat. He loves justice. And so a good king loves justice. A bad king doesn't love justice. And we have lots of bad kings in the world. Right? Everybody can have a good hard look at their leader. I'm not going to make any comments about Canada, and say this person does not love justice, and therefore can't possibly be good. But if God is the best of kings, then his justice must be the best of justices. So that was Psalm 99, verse 6. Right? Psalm 99, verse 6. The king is mighty, he loves justice. And so let's have a look at justice. Just briefly, then we'll get into the Haftarah portion. It starts, what's our first little bit of justice? Slavery. Sorry, it was verse 4, was it? Okay. The slavery. You've just finished the 10 Commandments, and the 10 Commandments are, the tension with the 10 Commandments is who are they for? Right? There's a midrash that says when God spoke, fire came out of his mouth, and it split into 70 fires for each of the nations, so that this actually applies to the whole world, right? There's also this tradition that says that the Torah doesn't, and where do you get the tension with that? Well, you get it in the New Testament when Paul in Romans is discussing with Gentiles, okay, that you're not under the law. Well, then you're Gentiles. Of course you're not, right? However, if you're thinking, well, wait a second, the 10 Commandments are given to everybody, then everybody's under the law. Does that make sense? There's that tension. Which one are you actually talking about? Well, now we get the justice, which has to be applied to you. And the first application is slavery. You go, wow, you've just had the Big Ten, and now we straight away go into slavery. Why is it so important? Probably because that's what they were about, 50 days ago. Prior to Passover, the Hebrew nation was a slave nation. And now that they're free, the first rule is don't make slaves. Well, actually, it doesn't say don't make slaves. It says after a certain time, you set them free. And this is a tension, right? If you've just been a slave nation and now you're free and you're setting up your new nation, wouldn't the best of laws been don't buy slaves? Right? That's the one you probably would be expecting the text to say, but it doesn't have that. And this, of course, brings in a big debate. Is slavery legal? Is it illegal? What's the actual real intention? And putting it into context, the word slave is eved, which means a servant. It's also the word for work. So obviously what do servants do? They work. It's also the word for avodah, work, which is also the word for worship. So even our actions and things that we do for God, which might be work, is also worship. And conversely, worship should also be a work. This is one of the reasons why in the Orthodox tradition, now here I'm talking about the Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, Christian Orthodoxy, their church services go for about 4 hours. Why do they go on for so long? I hear you ask. Because they really, really want you to be tired when you finish, right? Like, what are you doing on a Sunday? Saturday is your rest day. Sunday is your work day, right? You go to church and you work. And so you work. You've got to stand up, you've got to sing, you've got to pray, you've got to move, you've got to bow, you've got to do all kinds of stuff. When you finish, you go, oh man, I'm tired. I have worked, right? And it's a very different way of thinking for this. But in the Hebrew Bible, in the scriptures, in the Torah, we should notice there are no jails. Right? When doing your justice system, no one goes to jail. I mean, in the Bible, people do go to jail, like Joseph's in a dungeon and people in dungeons. That kings usually had those kinds of things, but there wasn't really a place that you find in antiquity where you would enter an Israelite town. There's the jail. Punishments were enacted immediately, right? And we see it in the text, right? They do a judgment, take the guy out the camp and stone him, like immediately. There's no let me get my lawyers, let me get my legal defense team, see if we can haggle the deal down. They were done immediately. And one of the issues of the ancient world, compensation, right? I owe you because maybe I stole something from you, maybe I damaged your property, maybe I've insulted you, and the penalty is some sort of financial obligation. But if I can't pay, then what happens? If you've got an immediate justice system and the justice is payment, well, how do I pay if I haven't got it? I have to work it off. How do I work it off? I work it off for you. And so you become basically indentured servants. So slaves, yes, they're slaves. Servants, yes, absolutely same word. And there are multiple different ways to get them. You could sell yourself into slavery. You could have done a poor business decision. Something may have happened to your family. There could have been a disaster like a flood or an earthquake. And you have no recourse, but there's no job for you, you don't have work. So you would go to somebody and be sold into slavery. You would attach yourself to somebody who has wealth and they would protect you because they've got obligations. If I own a slave, I have to feed you, I have to house you, I have to give you clothing. I might even find you a partner, right? Might actually marry you off, and actually therefore you might start a family. It's not that they're all walking around in chains and I get to whip them every now and again. This is not that at all. It's something actually completely different. It's a bit more relational. After a certain period, though, whether I've managed to pay all my debt off or not, if I've paid my debt off earlier, I can go. But if I can't, I still go. Because again, the intention, the part of God's justice is that humans are not actually meant to be slaves to each other. He understands that humans being humans, they might get themselves into this trouble. But the high idealism was actually, this is not the way. Now, there were occasions when people would actually have developed a relationship with their master that they actually wanted to stay. And then there were rules for bringing that in. But so slavery wasn't something that you don't see the prophets arguing against it. Jesus doesn't argue against it. And Paul even tells a slave to go back. That doesn't mean we should have slaves, right? It just means that in the society that you do have them, this is the way that they work. And they work in a system that is justice. This Torah portion has 53 mitzvot, 53 rules, and which is nearly 10% of the all 613. Although technically, God didn't give 613 laws at Mount Sinai because obviously he'd already given 7 to Noah. He had already told the world to be fruitful and multiply. So actually, when you take away a few of the rules that he's already given the world, then it's a lot less. Their response, the people's response to the rules is we will do and we will hear, right? Or we will understand. So the first, it doesn't say we will understand them and then we'll do them. It's we will do them, and then as we're doing, we'll figure out the meaning, right? We'll understand why we're doing what we're doing. So it's obedience first. Obedience doesn't have to be understood. Obedience is something that you just do, right? We're asked to obey Jesus, asked to obey the Messiah. We're not asked to sit down and have a theological discourse that lasts 6 years and then I get a degree, and only then do I actually get together and start obeying. No, you start obeying straight away, and then you figure out the relationship. this portion also brings in the concept of the annual festivals, where you are told that you have to appear before the Lord 3 times. Right, the actual rule is in 23, verse. Excuse me, cat. Verse 12, 17. Sorry, 3 times a year you will appear before the Lord your God. Doesn't say why. Again, it's one of those rules. You'll figure it out. 3 times a year, all men will appear before the sovereign Lord. Right. So what's not there in the rule? Where? Right. So we have developed obviously the idea of pilgrimage to Jerusalem and things like that. Absolutely. But with a rule like this, 3 times you will appear before the Lord. Okay, how many times do I need to go to a synagogue every year? Well, at least 3. Okay. Christians, we've got it down to 2, Christmas and Easter. But okay, but for 3. So it does mean that there is meant to be times, as we already know, times where you should always make sure that you appear before God. That doesn't mean you don't. That's 3's the all of them. No, you do a lot more. But all men. Now, of course, this is something that you can't do practically, right? If you all do it on the same day. It's just not physically possible. And what do I mean by that? Well, you mean all the men, right, all over the world show up. It's in the ancient world, you would be forever traveling. You'd never actually physically do anything. So Jews who were living in Babylon, Jews who were living in Alexandria, Jews who were living in Athens, did not go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. It just wasn't physically possible. There were those families that did, and what Jesus is one of them. But that's because he lives here, and he's close by. Although technically, those of you who were living in Athens, you could still fulfill this commandment by making sure that 3 times a year you actually went to synagogue and appeared before the Lord as a community with intention. So it doesn't say a place, and it doesn't tell you how. Right? These are the things you now have to interpret and figure out. What does it mean to appear before God? How do I dress? How do I think? How do I behave? Do I have to fast beforehand? Is this part of a worship service? Is there a special prayer that I have to say? Do I have to bring a certain offering at a time? A lot of this you'll work out. Interestingly, then, God says that he's going to send an angel to prepare the way, which of course begs the question, who is that? Now, if you're a good Christian theologian, you'll start going into theophanies, and it'll be pre-Jesus's, things like that. Okay, although the word is, I'll send a malach, I'll send a messenger. And who's a messenger? Moses. Okay, it actually could be Moses as well. Okay, it doesn't say it's a divine figure, but it could be, and so no one's ever 100% sure who in the Jewish world who it is. It sometimes reads like it's a divine figure, and sometimes it reads like it could just be a messenger. But however, there is the necessity to obey, which means you obey God, but you also obey other figures, right? Some people who say, I follow Jesus and I only obey Jesus. I don't obey anybody else. I don't obey the law. I don't obey the government. I don't obey my parents. Oops, that's a bit scary. Okay, all kinds of things. Well, that's actually not true. The Bible does have other people that you're supposed to obey, not just God. And this is one of them, where God has a messenger, a malach, an angel, and we are instructed to actually listen to his voice and do what he says. Okay. All right. This text also brings in one of the border issues that you see in the Bible, okay, where it says, I'm going to establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea and to the river Euphrates, which is a rather long river, by the way. And so it's not 100% clear, unfortunately, where those boundaries are. Some people will have the sort of greater Israel approach, where Israel is to have sort of large sections of the Middle East, which it has never managed to occupy. It also doesn't have the sheer number of people to do so. Okay. I mean, let's take Canada, for example. I think the fifth largest nation on the entire planet, with a population of 35 million. Like it's huge country with nobody in it. So it's might be Canada, but it's largely unoccupied, undeveloped, and etc. And if we do the same thinking, there's only 14 million Jewish people in the planet, although let's just say that there's a bunch of Jewish people who don't know who they're Jewish, and eventually Elijah will come sort it out. We might get up to 30 million. You just don't have the capacity to occupy that much land, right? So what does it mean? Well, it doesn't mean that we have jurisdiction and therefore rule, but other people live there. Okay, well, got that today, have we not? Right? That's what we today call the West Bank. Some people say it needs to be Israel. Well, then it already is by definition, if that's your definition. I think sometimes things get unclear, and we should probably, this should be one of those things called the chokim, where you go, I'm not 100% sure how to interpret this. So let's just believe that, well, okay, one day from the river to the sea. Oh, where have we heard that before? And to the Euphrates. How will it work? Don't know. Okay, but God will figure it out. Then there's an interesting switch where we go from a series of rules to a small narrative, and the small narrative is where we kill an animal and then sprinkle the blood on the people. Moses, this is in chapter 24. He gets up early in the morning. He builds an altar. Okay, altars are not a Christian invention. Okay, we should never be surprised when we walk into a church and you see something like that, or if we build them ourselves. Okay, he sets up stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered offerings and sacrifices and fellowship offerings or peace offerings. Then he took half of the blood and he put it in bowls and he splashed it against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant, whatever that is. Okay, this is this mysterious book, which no one's 100% sure. Was it what I'm reading right now? Was it something else? Is it just the words from Exodus? Has he been creating Genesis since his travels? Well, I'm not sure. He read it, okay, to the people, right? It's because they've only got one book. So we've mentioned this before. The scriptures were heard more than they were read, right? Which is the reason why hearing the Bible is actually an important task. They say we'll do everything and we'll obey. We will hear, because the word for obey is also the word for hear. Then he took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "This is the blood of the covenant, right, that he makes with the people." This is the verse that is the blood of the covenant, which is then quoted in by Hebrews, which talks about Messiah having a better covenant. And that's a great way for the writer of Hebrews to talk about the new covenant. But one thing we sometimes forget is that this is a one-off, just like Yeshua is a one-off, right? That lasts. So Moses doesn't keep killing animals and keep sprinkling blood on the people. Oh, and by the way, he doesn't get blood on everybody. Why not? This is not physically possible. Okay, you know, you don't have enough animals to start splashing blood on 2 million people. Plus, try and do that, you know, in one 24-hour period. You just can't. So it's done by a group of elders. So that he's putting blood on representatives of people, not on literally everyone. Although it applies to everyone. Within the covenant, there are sacrifices. So the sacrifices that we see in the Torah are not the covenant. Right? So, you know, that they're not the thing that makes the covenant. The covenant is made, it's a one-off. God has got his people out of Egypt. Egypt is the incubator of the Hebrew people. It's got a role to play in its beginning, it's got a role to play in its end. And God sets up his covenant. It's not the first covenant he's made. The first covenant he's made was the covenant with Noah, right? And animals, right? The first covenant is made with animals, and there's no blood there. Sometimes when you have the word brit or covenant, the verb that's attached to that is kara, which was the verb to cut. And so you cut things, yes, so there's blood. Sometimes you cut animals, and in the ancient world, sometimes you cut yourself. Right? Two people would cut their hands, join their hands together, and that is the covenant. But sometimes in the Bible, the verb is not to cut. In Genesis, the first time the word covenant is used is just mekayem. I'm going to establish a covenant. And the covenants with animals, so we're not killing animals, because that would sort of defeat the purpose of making covenant with animals. And then Hosea chapter 2, verse 18, God's going to make another covenant with animals. So they also start at the beginning and they somehow move at the end. And as we know from other prophets, the animal world eventually comes and joins in special relationships again with people, so that wolves lay down with lambs, and children play with snakes, and the lion eats straw. But here, this is a one-off thing which ratifies the covenant that God has made with his people. And within the covenant, is the sacrificial system. Now, the Haftarah portion, which is attached to this portion, there are a couple of options. Just I know that Melody sent out the one that was the king's portion, but there's a prophet's portion as well. It's from Jeremiah, and that's the one I wanted to draw on. It's the one that the Ashkenazis are focusing on, and it's Jeremiah 34. Starting at verse 8, and you'll be able to see why they attach this portion to the Mishpatim, because it starts with, the word came to Jeremiah from the Lord after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people in Jerusalem, right, to proclaim freedom for the captives. So he's actually letting the captives go free. Unfortunately, they don't actually do that. They end up holding on to their slaves and bringing them back, which is a real problem. All right. So this is the verb here is also koret, a covenant with the people, but it doesn't tell you what animal Zedekiah may have or may have not made a covenant with the people. When God says, I cut a covenant, karati et habrut, it means I cut myself, right? So remember, sometimes people, they wouldn't just kill animals. We always sometimes leap to animals being cut, but sometimes people would cut themselves and join their hands together when they were forming a covenant. And in some cases, people just wouldn't do that. They wouldn't use blood at all. They would actually swap shoes, like making agreements in the book of Ruth, right? when they were ratifying a covenant or an agreement, because that's what a brit is. Okay, it's an agreement. Everybody's making an agreement, not just God and man, but nations do it to each other and people do it to each other. So if I want to buy your car, that's a brit. No one slashes anything. Okay, maybe the tires, but that's about it. Okay? The Zedekiah here is making a covenant, and interestingly enough, sorry, back to where God, when it says I cut myself, right, making a covenant. Well, how can you do that? Well, that's an interesting thought, and of course that leads us into Yeshua. The word of the Lord comes to Jeremiah. King Zedekiah has made a covenant with the people to proclaim freedom for the slaves, and everyone was to free their Hebrew slave, right? Again, this is there are differences between Hebrew slaves and non-Hebrew slaves, and there are different rules for each one. And there was even a way for some of the slaves who were Gentiles to become Hebrews. In fact, the quickest way that for any person, mainly females, to join the Jewish people was to be captured in battle. Okay, it took 1 month. Right, 1 month. She shaved her hair, she cut her nails, she changed her clothes, she mourned the city that she came from, she mourned her parents, and then within 1 month she was Jewish. Right, fastest way to join the Jewish people. Not the preferred method. I'm just going to suggest, but it was a way. Here there was a desire to free your Hebrew slaves. This idea that Jewish people shouldn't be owning each other. Both male and female, no one was to hold a fellow Hebrew in bondage. So all the officials and the people who entered into this covenant agreed that they would free their male and female slaves. These guys probably cut themselves, okay, as a symbol, and no longer hold them in bondage. They agreed and they set them free. And here's the rub. But afterwards, they changed their minds and they took back the slaves that they had freed, and they enslaved them again. And so there's this normally you were supposed to set slaves free after every 6 years. Okay, that's what we read in the Torah portion. And then what we discover is it wasn't applied. Right? Remember how it starts? These are the rules that I'm putting before you. You pick them up and apply them. They only have power if you're going to apply them. And we discovered that people just weren't doing it, and much to the chagrin of God and the prophets. So this is something that they should have happened. It doesn't. So Zedekiah makes a proclamation that we're going to release them, but then they renege, and so God sends the prophet Jeremiah. And he's going to come with, unfortunately, some nasty things to say. So this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I made a covenant with your ancestors. That's the one at Mount Sinai. That's the covenant that we're referring to, the one that Moses sprinkles the blood on. When I brought them out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, right? What's the first rule of Mishpatim? Slaves, right? You were a slave. This is how you should treat slaves. And every 7th year, each of you must free your fellow Hebrews who have sold themselves to you. All kinds of reasons. There's no excuses for why it happened. It happened. Now treat them well. Let's set them free. After they have served you 6 years, you must let them go free. Your ancestors, however, did not listen to me or pay attention to me. Right? Who's he referring to here? Let's remember, everyone who gets the blood of that covenant on in Exodus dies in the wilderness. Right? It's one of those sad tragedies that the people who were redeemed from Egypt still couldn't do it. Right? Is it because they had a slave mentality? Is it because they they were just willfully ignorant or disobedient? Were tempted with, I have no idea what they're tempted with in the desert, but they can't seem to embrace the relationship with God, their Redeemer, even though they've been redeemed, even though they've seen miracles, even though they've seen miracles every single day. Um, uh, it's the people who are born free that actually end up in the land of Canaan. All right. They didn't listen and they didn't pay attention. So recently you repented and did what was right in my sight. What an interesting thing to say. Right? This implies that they're actually like even though we it seems to say that the beginning of the Haftarah portion seems to imply that their intentions were false. Right? Here God comes along and says, no, you did fine. Right? You had actually repented. You and you did what was right. Each of you proclaimed freedom to your own people. You've made a covenant before me in the house that bears my name. Right? So they did it. Now we get the location. It looks like they did this in God's place. So it looks like they probably had a whole service. They probably did have an animal that was deliberately sacrificed for this case to actually ratify the covenant. And now you've turned around and profaned my name. Each of you has taken back male and female slaves. So how is this profaning of the name of God? Right? Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. This one isn't to do with cursing God's name. It's not swearing. It's what is the profanity here? It's willful disobedience. Right? It's saying I'm going to do something and then doing the absolute opposite, particularly in public. Right? The profaning of the name is where you're identified with God and then your actions bring God's name into disrepute because God is revealed and or known and or has power in the world through you. Okay, how does anyone know who Jesus is? Well, people could say, "Well, just read the Bible." Well, they're not going to read the Bible. How are they going to know? They're going to know Him through you. You're going to know Him through your actions, the way you love. What's that famous song? They'll know that we are Christians by our love. That's the first way that someone encounters the living God, is through a living person, and so our actions give honor or dishonor to God's name. And so you've turned around, you've profaned my name. Each of you has brought back his male or female servants. You've forced them to become your slaves again. Therefore, and now comes the punishment. You have not obeyed me. You have not proclaimed freedom to your own people. So I make a proclamation. Freedom for you, declares the Lord. Freedom to fall by the sword. Ouch. Okay. Plague and famine. I'll make you abhorrent to all the kingdoms of the earth. Those who have violated my covenant, who have not fulfilled the terms of the covenant that they made before me. Which one is he talking about? The one that they just did. I mean, there are lots of covenants in the Bible. Sometimes people only ever talk about two covenants, Old Covenant, New Covenant. There are a lot of covenants in the Bible. In Hebrew, it's called Sefer HaBritot, right? The Book of the Covenants. When you put the Hebrew Bible and the Greek Bible, Old and New Testaments together, it's known as that. The leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, the court officials, the priests, and all the people of the land who walked between the pieces of the calf. So, what are we talking about here? Okay. Do you remember Abraham, the covenant of Abraham, where God killed 5 animals? Well, Abraham killed 5 animals and cut them in 2, and then it often says God walked between the pieces. It was sort of like a dream sequence. There was an oven and a fire, right? How bizarre is that? Okay. I actually tried looking to find if I could figure out what the oven was. I couldn't do it. I just could not find a commentary, Jewish or otherwise, that could describe adequately, I think, an oven. Fire is always the voice of God. So that's an easy one to pick up. Notice in Abraham's case, it's a dream sequence, right? God asks him to bring these animals. God doesn't say, cut them in two, right? That's Abraham's complete initiative. He does that, and then he falls asleep, which seems like a crazy thing to do, right? Cut a bunch of animals in half and then sort of sit next to them and then doze off. Oh, well, he was 99, so maybe that's an excuse. Here it seems that they seem to have perhaps either done that again, or God is just referencing this event in the past. So it could be that that as part of their ceremony in the temple, they literally cut an animal in two, and then the leadership walked between it. So this is the Genesis 17 and Jeremiah 34 are the only two times in the Bible you actually have this idea of walking between two pieces. Okay, so it most likely was not something that you did a lot of. Okay? Don't sort of get this image that the Jewish people are constantly ripping animals in half and running between the middle and swapping shoes and doing all kinds of crazy cultish things. This could just be a reference. Jeremiah could just be making a reference to this one-off event, which, by the way, was a dream sequence. Okay, so yes, real animals got cut in two, but it was this vision thing that Abram sees. Most animals were sacrificed and then offered on altars, and then were consumed. The actual animal was eaten in fellowship. So, what's the punishment? I'm going to deliver the people into the hands of their enemies, and their dead bodies will become food for the birds and the wild animals. I'll deliver Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his officials into the hands of the enemies who want to kill him, to the army of the king of Babylon, which has withdrawn from you. This is referencing that Babylon actually attacks Jerusalem several times. It wasn't it was like the third time ice cream. The third time was the one that you actually burn the temple and really destroy. So Babylon had been used by God on a couple of occasions. So here it seems, which has withdrawn from you, he's referring to a time when the people of Israel have watched their enemies actually leave for a season. They've thought maybe, well, that's it, and we're still here. Now we'll just learn from our mistakes. I'm going to give the order, declares the Lord, that I will bring them back to the city. They'll fight against it, take it, burn it down, and I will lay waste to the towns of Judah so that no one can live there. I mean, this is it's big stuff. It's a terrible thing. So it's the Torah portion doesn't end there. The Haftarah portion doesn't end there. The Haftarah portion then tacks on just a couple of verses from Jeremiah 33. So the people of Israel fail to love justice, right? They fail to love the Mishpatim. And what does Micah say? What does God require of you? And you go, well, he's got to go. He needs me to fulfill all 613 laws. No, he needs you to love justice, to walk humbly, right, with God, to love mercy. So God loves justice from Psalm. We should love justice. And what is justice? Well, one aspect of it is the idea of freedom. Jeremiah 33, which is previous to this destruction, the Haftarah puts on verses 25 and 26 of Jeremiah 33, which are beautiful words. It says, this is what the Lord says: if I have not made my covenant with day and night and established the laws of heaven, then I'll reject the descendants of David and Jacob, my servant, who and will not choose one of his sons to rule over the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for I will restore their fortunes. I will have compassion on them. So the Haftarah portion ends with mercy. So God loves justice. the people choose not to do justice. Part of the covenant is that there will be punishment. But that isn't the end of the story. The Haftarah turns around and says, and it just pulls a verse from a previous section. It says, God will restore. We are not doomed to forever destruction. And so that's actually quite, well, it's the incredible mercy and grace of God to do such a thing. All right, the next Torah portion, Terumah, which is the word for offerings, and that's actually what it is. It's the offerings. The verse 20, the chapter 25 verse 1 starts off. I better just get it in the Hebrew so that we can have a look at the way it works out. So this is V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe le'emor. Say, this is God says to Moses, speak. Devar b'nei Israel, say to the children of Israel. V'yikachuli Terumah, take to me an offering. Okay. It's an interesting word. Take. How is this offering implied? Is it forced or is it free will? Like, what is the word that may have been used? It doesn't say the word tzaveh, command. It doesn't say command people to bring me an offering. And it doesn't say haveh, bring me an offering, which would imply a demand. Kach is or in Hebrew it's the word take, but it can be it's not used in the way you would say something forceful. Like, if let's just say I've gone over to Melody's house and Melody says, hey Aaron, what would you like? Would you like tea or coffee? In Hebrew you say nikach te, I take tea. I mean, I don't take tea. I mean, Melody makes and brings it to me, right? I'm the guest. So, but it's and it's not a demand, it's a getting a gift, right? And so the verb implies that all these offerings are free will. Okay, that this is we're looking at free will offerings, looking at something that you do not because it's required, but because there's a desire for you to give something back to God. And these, of course, you're not physically giving it to God. You're physically giving it to his priestly class. You're actually paying for the tabernacle. You're paying for the priestly families. You know, these kinds of things, or support, or when we give an offering in our churches, right, on Sundays, it goes to pay the pastor's salary and the music team and the electricity. It goes to God. Yes, that is true, but it goes to something a little more than that as well. And these are verse 2. You are you are to receive the offerings from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. So it's purely voluntarily. These are the offerings you are to receive from them: gold, silver, bronze, and it gives you this incredible long lists, and some wonderful things, and all colorful, right? Blue, purple, scarlet yarn, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins, dyed skins. And my version here says, and another type of durable leather. Okay, I don't know what everybody else has got in their versions. Some probably have badger skin, do they? Is it or various? Yep. And that's the Hebrew word, which was, you've seen it before, tachash. It's this mysterious animal skin, which no one knows what it is, and it's used for the inner part of the sanctuary. So out of all of the tabernacle, this mysterious leather called tachash is what's going to be used for the innermost part of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And when you go into rabbinic commentaries, they'll say this is a unicorn. How's that one for? Yeah, I know. He's always going, oh, the rabbi's on drugs again. How did he come to this conclusion? It's this mystical animal or something. They have no idea what it is. They only know that it's skin. It's the skin of some animal, and God is going to live inside it. Right? This is that theological. It's actually a beautiful theological picture of Yeshua, of God Himself, because God says in verse 8, then make me a sanctuary and I will dwell among them. Well, that's the English, but the Hebrew is build me a sanctuary and I'll live in them. And it's in them, not in it. Right? It's the Hebrew says, build me a sanctuary and I'll live betochem. Okay. Okay, I don't know. I did the little. God's desire is to live inside people, not it. So God's gonna it's where and God lives inside skin, and as we've seen from, or we will see at the end of the Exodus, it takes them 9 months to build the tabernacle, which all kind of fits well. But there's this mythical or mystical skin that God requires called tachash. It only appears here in Exodus 25. It appears once again in the same idea in Exodus 35, where you wrap the ark in whenever they move it. Okay, they took the skins from the inner part of the Mishkan, inner part of the Holy of Holies, and that's what they'd wrap the ark in to safely transport it. And then again in Ezekiel 16, verse 10, where God says, I'm going to dress you in tachash, right? I'm going to wrap you in it. So I wrapped myself in it. This is how much I love you. I love you so much. I'm going to wrap what I wrapped myself in. I'm going to wrap you in it, whatever it is. It's a very interesting sort of a thing. The Exodus has 7 chapters of how you get out of Egypt. And then it has 17 chapters of how you build a tent. So devil's in the details, and so God's in the details. There's a lot of construction in instructions. You build this thing called the Ark, or the Aron Habrit, the box of the covenant. And even though God had said in the previous Torah portions, don't make idols, what do you have on top of the ark? Statues of angels, right? How you know what they look like is anyone's guess. Okay, I mean, God tells you that this is what they look like, sort of people with wings that touch. When you decorate the tabernacle, it's got pictures, it's got images, it's got pictures of angels and things like that. So even though God said don't do that, you do that. Probably because we don't understand what it means to make a graven image, right? That's more likely what it means. The graven images are not pictures of people or scenes like that. And this explains why if you come to Israel and go on tours of the Galilee and you go to these ancient synagogues, when you go to synagogues, what do you see on the floor? Pictures. You'll see zodiacs, you'll see images of stories from the Bible, things like that, and you think, hang on, I thought this was all idolatry, but these are synagogues. These are very, very, very faithful Jewish people, and they thought it was okay to make these images. The pendulum swing. Sometimes you go iconoclastic and you make nothing, and then you swing all the way to having lots and lots of pictures, and we in Christianity have done exactly the same thing. We've oscillated between people like the Catholics and the Orthodox, who appreciate color and they appreciate pictures and images, and they appreciate things like statues, and which none of them are being worshipped. They're tools to aid in worship, and you go all the way to iconoclastic Protestants who will have the plainest of church buildings, right? We'll go and we'll call plain beautiful, right? It's quite an interesting thing, right? The Exodus describes all these colors of how the Mishkan's color red and gold and silver, and we would have walked into the tabernacle, we would have said, oh, look at all these Orthodox crazy people. Whereas we walk into our churches and it's just plain brown, like, and that's it. Okay. And we say, this is beautiful. Sure, why not? Simplicity is beautiful. This is true. Okay, but the other one can also be quite beautiful. A lot of the tabernacle encourages participation, right? There's things that we do in it, and like bake bread and put it on a table, build a big menorah, a big candelabra, and light it. Why? Like, what if you've got this? What's the bread actually for? Who actually sees it? What's the menorah for? Remember, this is inside the tabernacle, which only so very few people can actually go. So who's the light actually for? If it's eternal light, what is it actually for? And that's a good question, and it gets more discussed in the next Torah portion. But there's this partnership that God has with earth, and so there's this sort of a way where He is being remembered or adored or even appreciated through the worship and participation of a human. Like, if God is a king, how is He a king? He can only be a king if there's people in His kingdom. Does that make sense? And so there's this partnership. God is a king, but He is only a king if you and I call Him one. How's that one for a head spinner? Oh, God is a king. Fine. Let's imagine there's no humans at all. There are no humans. There's just God. Is He still a king? There'd be one answer, but yes, He is. Of what? Right? And so He Himself knows, no, I need people. Right? So I save people. I redeem. I take for myself a nation. Right? And it says, I want to be king. So there's this partnership. Light a candle. I'm light. God is light. So you burn a menorah before me. But you're the God of light. What do you need light for? You live in the dark? No, you chase away dark. Okay, there's this. You don't need bread. You're God. You don't need it. But there's this thing where you are the bread of life. You give the bread of heaven. So we will have before you 24/7, Lord, bread. There's this participation between God and man. So God delights in our worship. Does He need it? No. Does He desire it? Absolutely. Right? And there's this participation, and as we're adoring heaven, He is becoming great and powerful. And the Torah portion that's given for this section is from the Kings, and we run to Kings chapter 5. That's where it's going to start off. And the Torah portion discusses free will offerings, which you give to people. It discusses this great, interesting material that no one knows what it is. And it describes that the purpose for the Mishkan is so that God can live in people, not it, not the thing. Okay. There's this participation. You build something and I'll come and live in you. Okay? You be busy about this. Now, that doesn't mean that the tabernacle is not important. It doesn't mean that Aaron doesn't do the sacrifices. They do. It doesn't mean that Hannah's not going to stand before the Parochet and pray for kids. That there's still a great responsibility and a great power in the thing, but there's also that hint that the purpose of actually constructing this tabernacle was actually so I can live in you. And Moses understands this a little bit when in Deuteronomy, he will start to downplay the importance of the tabernacle and upplay the hearts of the people. Write these laws on your hearts. Right? Make sure you have a heart for God. When he says, when in Deuteronomy, Moses will say, when you pray, pray this prayer: Lord, hear from heaven, not hear from in the middle of the tabernacle. This sort of idea that God's actually not trapped inside a box. It's much larger than that. So the Torah, the Haftarah portion that is attached to it, is Solomon's construction of the temple. So you've got construction of the tabernacle, so they throw in the construction of the temple there. And we know that Solomon builds the temple. Of course we do. God had said to King David, right, you can't build, you're a man of war, you've shed lots of blood. By the way, God is also a warrior. So this is not a slight on David. It's not to say, oh, you're a man of war and that's absolutely terrible. Okay, because God himself is a warrior. God just says, look, but my building, where it's supposed to be a representation of peace, so I need a peaceful person to construct it. So what does David do with that? Those rules? Does he say, "Yep, absolutely, I'll do absolutely nothing to this"? No, he does everything. He prepares it all. He hires all the workers. He gets all the gold and silver. He buys all the materials. He gets the architects to build up the plans. All Solomon has to do is Lego, right? He just needs to put all the bits and pieces together. Even though we still call it Solomon's temple. So David does have a little bit to play. So let's have a look at we'll do from chapter 5, verse 13 and go through to 6:13. So King Solomon conscripted laborers from all Israel. There were 30,000 men. He sent them off to Lebanon in shifts of 10,000 a month, so that they spent 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stonecutters in the hills, as well as 3,300 foremen who supervised the project, and they directed the workers. At the king's command, they removed from the quarry large blocks of high-grade stone to provide a foundation of dressed stone for the temple. The craftsmen of Solomon and Hiram, the king of Lebanon, and the workers from Byblos cut and prepared the timber and stone for the building of the temple. In the 480th year after the Israelites came out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. Did you hear that? The month of Ziv? Okay, that's actually one of the original months in the Hebrew Bible. There are only like 4 months that are actually named. Okay, you actually don't call that anymore. It's gone by the wayside. All the months of the Jewish calendar now are named after Babylonian gods. But there was a calendar in the First Temple period, and they did have different names for their months. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. Portico in the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and it projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow windows high up in the temple walls. Against the walls of the main hall and the inner sanctuary, he built a structure around the building in which there were side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, middle floor was 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used. This is interesting. And no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. The entrance to the lowest floor was in the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level and from there to the third. So he built the temple, completed it, roofed it with beams and cedar planks. And he built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits, and they were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. The word of the Lord came to Solomon, as for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, observe my laws, and keep all my commands and obey them, I'll fulfill through you the promise that I gave David your father. I will live among the Israelites, and I will not abandon my people Israel. And it's very similar to what we see in the building of the Mishkan. Now, there's a lot there in this portion, right? The intention was God will live in with the Israel, not in it, even though he is. That just like the tabernacle, the purpose is you build this structure, and it's a monument. It's a place of pilgrimage. It's a holy building. It's all kinds of those things. It's the house of the Lord. It's a house of prayer. But the purpose is for God to dwell with his people. Okay. There's a couple of interesting things. Who builds the temple, I hear you ask? Jews and Gentiles. Right? It's Jewish workers, yes, but it's also the workers of Hiram and the stone cutters of Byblos. So just like at Exodus, there were Jews and Gentiles. Coming in to build the temple is also a project of both Jews and Gentiles. And they used the best of stone, obviously, to lay the foundation. And what's interesting is they chisel all the stones ahead of time, and they bring them to the temple quarry in the size and shape that they need. The text says they did not use a hammer or a chisel on the temple mountain. So the work was done in reverential silence. Well, obviously, lots of grunting and groaning. And if you had how did you actually transport these stones? I hear you ask. That's a really good question. Who has been to Jerusalem and been to the tunnels underneath? Right? Most of you, or some of you, yes, some of you have, and you've seen how big those stones are, right? Like some of the largest stones at the base of the Temple Mountain are 500 tons. That's their sheer weight. That is the same size stones as are in the base of the pyramids of Egypt. They're massive, massive blocks. Kings is telling us that they chiseled that, not in place. They chiseled that up in a quarry somewhere. And then they brought that to the temple. The next question is, how? How can you possibly do that? Right? Yep. They've actually had engineers. They've asked engineers this question, taking them to the Temple Mountain, show them the stones, and then say, okay, so how would you move it? And they all say the same thing. We have no mechanism today to do so. I have no crane big enough to move that block. Right? That we just don't have it. But they did 3,000 years ago. Exactly how they do it. They did it quietly, without mechanical tools, as we understand the phrase. So that's a good question, and I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, but I did see one discussion, and it's pretty far out there, but I ponder it. Is that the ancient world had wisdom that we lack today? Okay, just as we have wisdom that the ancient world doesn't have. And the Jewish people had thought about this question, by the way. You know, how do we actually build the darn thing? Okay, you know, you would actually go visit the temple. People would make pilgrimage 3 times a year, and and obviously one of the questions would be, wow, this is really cool. How the heck did they build this? So there actually is a couple of traditions. One is found in a book called The Testament of Solomon. Anyone ever heard of it? Fair enough. It's just this testamental literature that appears in the late Second Temple period, and the books are attributed to various characters. They're never actually written by those people. They're written much, 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 much later. In the Testament of Solomon, it discusses how Solomon was a chief exorcist. He was so wise he could actually defeat demons, and he had a special ring, okay, which had a 5-pointed star on it. Right, the original Solomon star had 5 points, not the 6-point star that we have today, or the Magen David. And today, whenever you have a 5-pointed star, it's called the pentagram, and which means just 5 points, and it's in relation to being something evil. I mean, it's not. It's just a star. It's and it was used to capture evil people, according to the tradition. Solomon was a chief exorcist. He would capture demons, and he enslaved them, and he would use the demons to move these stones. Yeah, it's a fanciful story. Just so you know, the Muslims picked up on this story. They sort of heard this rumor and went, "Oh, that's a good one." And when you go onto the Temple Mountain, they actually have a place called the Well of the Djinn, where according to Islamic tradition, this is where Solomon imprisoned all the demons. Okay, and it's just a thing, but it means they're picking up a story. Do I buy into that one? Probably not so much. Was Solomon super smart? Yes. Did he actually probably exorcise demons? Why not? I think a lot of people did. Okay, exorcisms are not a Christian invention; they're a Jewish invention. Okay, you actually meet Jewish exorcists in the Book of Acts who are not followers of Jesus. Right? It was a thing that you did. There was a definite belief that there was a demonic world, and you couldn't leave it alone. You had to fight it. You had to challenge it, and so people would study about how to do that, and put that into practice. By the way, this is the reason, one of the reasons why Joseph is the patron saint of exorcists. Okay, why is Jesus allowed, or why is Joseph allowed as a human to be the earthly parent of Jesus? What gives him the right to have such an honor? In early Jewish Christian exegesis, they said, well, that's because the demons wanted to get him, right? Satan wanted to get Jesus. Notice that Jesus meets Satan for the first time after his baptism. Right? That's why he has his baptism, and then the Spirit pushes Jesus into the desert, where he is tempted by Satan. So what's the good Jewish question? Why didn't Satan do it before? Like, why does Satan wait for Jesus to be filled with the Holy Spirit and then come and tempt him? Seems like not such a good battle plan, right? Probably would have picked him up off when he was a baby. No, wouldn't that have been the best time? Okay, conclusion, Satan didn't know where he was. Right? Satan is not God. Satan doesn't know everything. So actually, the birth and this kind of event occurs under his nose. It's not that he knew. Right? It's when Jesus is revealed with the voice of heaven and the Holy Spirit that Satan goes, "Oh, that guy? Oh my gosh, I better go get him." Okay, and so the tradition is that that Joseph was a demon slayer. He was an exorcist. Right? It's an Christian Orthodox tradition that Joseph could fight back the demons. He protected Jesus while he was a baby, and then as soon as Jesus could do it himself, Joseph disappears from the scene because there's no need for him anymore. So so even in the Catholic Church, because they're probably getting it from the Greeks, but even in the Catholic Church, the Joseph is the patron saint of exorcists. Now, again, nice fanciful story, but it does reveal some truth. Remember, what is a midrash? A midrash is a story that's not true but tells the truth. Back onto how we move big blocks of stone if we're not using demonic activity, is I was in Canada, right? I was actually at a science museum in Calgary, and how's this one for coming close to home? And inside this museum, they were having a display on sound, and they would have all these sound amplifiers, and they would shoot sound waves at sand, and all these patterns would form. And oh, that's kind of cool. And they would put objects over these machines that were just bombarding, and now sound was silent. You couldn't hear these sounds. These were frequencies that were not attuned to any human or animal, but they were so powerful that they could suspend objects. Like you could pick up objects and you could put them over these things, and they just sort of sit there, and you go, "Wow, this is really funky." Kids loved it. It was a kids thing, but it shows us the power of sound. And there's the frequencies. When frequencies go through you, they actually the resonation, because sound is a wave, it actually lifts things up. And so there is a theory, just a theory, that Solomon, being so smart, actually figured out the resonance of some of these building materials, where they would have people on either side of the stone banging drums or like tapping them, and that would create a resonance, which didn't make it levitate, but it made the stone lighter, light enough that then humans could move it. Okay. I actually buy that idea better than I buy into the we use demons to do it. But so it's the Haftarah portion is describing a silent building activity. Very interesting. It's created by both Jews and Gentiles, okay, which is exactly part of it's always been the story right from the beginning of the Exodus. It's Jews and Gentiles together, and and the purpose of all of this creation isn't to create a magnificent edifice that becomes the focal point and that's God. It's not. The purpose is build something, and in that participation, which is important, and it's my Father's house, says Jesus, and it's a house of prayer for all nations. All this is true, and it gives you somewhere to go. The purpose is because I want to live with you. God wants a relationship. He desires to have this intimate relationship with people, so much so, and they're going to get so close that God might even dwell inside a person, and which is exactly what we believe is going on right now, because he's been doing it for a very long time. All right, well, guys, let's open it up and see what you think. Okay, you can actually probably stop the recording now and go, Aaron is crazy. He thinks that they created these mythical floating pieces of stone. Well, maybe.
I thought they used trees.
They use trees.
Like cut down the trees.
Can't happen. The stones are too big that the force, the weight of the stone pushing down, yep, there is no possible way that happened.
Okay.
That's what people say, and you see pictures of them building, but every engineer says that can't happen. That's physically can't happen. Yeah, that's the mystery of the temple, right? The text tells us they did it without sound, right? Or they did it without chisels. So it doesn't say they didn't do it without sound. They worked quietly, a little bit of sound, but we're not sure.
A bit of a joke, but Jesus did say, if you have enough faith, you can say to this mountain, get up and move.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, they had to go uphill with a lot of these stones.
That's the other thing. It's the sheer weight of those stones means the force pushing back, the amount of force that you would have to go that way is, they say there wasn't a rope strong enough to contain the pressure. There wasn't enough animals that you would be able to stick on one end to be able to get you the force to go that way.
Absolutely.
They just physically don't know how to do it, how they did it. Hence the reason why in antiquity they came up with this tradition. Oh, he used to, divine spirits, which he managed to enslave, because they had to figure out some way for them to do it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, they're going to
Any other
rebuild at
comments?
some point too. So
Sorry?
they're going to rebuild the temple at some point too. So
Yeah. And if you go to the Temple Mount Institute, they don't tell you how they're going to like physically do it, but they say they're going to follow the same rules. They're going to cut all the stones prior, and they'll follow the rules where they'll try and do it as quietly as possible, etc., etc. And just everything will fit into place. This creates the midrash on the stone that the builders rejected, right, from Psalm 118, that the builders, the people at the quarry, prepared a stone, sent it to the temple. The workmen picked it up and they sort of put it over here. That doesn't fit there. Doesn't fit there. Doesn't fit there. The stupid stone. Who sent this? And sort of threw it away. And then as the temple's all being built, you get to the Rosh Pinah, what we call the capstone, right? And the bit of the arch that holds the force of the arch together, and therefore the whole building sits on. And it's the most important rock, right? You have to have that one working well. And they went, gee, what fits up there? And they realized it was the one they had thrown away before. And it becomes the last piece that holds the whole temple together. Nice little midrash that speaks of how important Yeshua is.
I just wanted to comment too on, you're talking about sound and just how, the word starts with God speaking. He speaks things into existence. And so and really then that comes back to us too, as the words that we speak carry life or they carry death.
Yeah.
And just that whole, idea of what you're saying, that Solomon, he understood that, like the words and the sound, that whole part. Yes, very, very interesting. And for us as believers to really recognize that our words with the Spirit of God in us carry that weight and that power. Our voice carries it, just as God's voice created things into existence.
And so we have to be careful. We should guard the tongue and use our proclamations for blessing and for the purposes of God, not for something, not for ill.
It's very interesting too that like we begin our faith with confess with your mouth and believe in your hearts, that we begin like that. And then it's another one is, and even the rocks will cry out. And so it's at the sound, often within our body of Christ here, he's like, you have to make a sound. How will they know if they do not hear, the word of God? So sound is so imperative. Like we don't, and even do not be silent day or night, as watchmen. And so there's always a sound involved in moving the kingdom in a sense, and so I mean, just bringing this I believe they would have moved it by sound in some way. I believe that more than anything else.
I do too. I think so too. It sort of fits the pattern. Messiah says he'll come with a shout, right?
Yeah, and he announced himself, as the trumpet got louder and louder and louder on Mount Sinai too, right? So this was just like until the people trembled, and the earth shook and the mountain shook, and so it's like another one. That's how he announced himself,
There's a Jewish midrash on that God comes down on the mountain and he only managed to say two words. He only managed to say Anochi Adonai, I am the Lord, and the very sound just made the Israelites all fall down in this absolute ecstatic rapture, like not fear, but just absolute joy at the sound of God. So they were so filled with joy, they thought, our hearts are going to explode. And so they turned to Moses and said, tell him to stop. We just can't handle it. If he says one more word, if he gets to word 3, we're dead. And
that's
so they sort of take the trembling bit and they say, no, that they don't want to go to the negative. They want to go to the positive.
Positive,
So it's just one way of them playing with it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it does say at the end of Exodus 20, it does say that all the people saw the voice of the shofar.
Right.
Right? And so
That's
you
right.
can hear it. It's also
Yeah.
something you see.
Yeah.
God speaks, and then there is this thing you see. You see
Yeah.
creation. You know,
Yeah.
you see the voice of God in action, which is
Yeah.
interesting. It's a
Right.
very physical thing.
Yeah. It's interesting too, that just even the day and age we are in right now, it truly is a battle of sound. It's a battle of voices. Of what is the truth? Truly, it has come down to that. The propaganda and everything that's actually moving has this sound to it, and who's the most convincing sound is truly the battle that's ahead of us right here. You know.
Oh, the
So
voices
sound
that
is
are
so
bombarding
Yeah.
our young
Yeah.
people is
Yeah.
intense. I mean,
intense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
They're-
so our
they're-
worship needs to be that much louder and stronger, you know, and that's what defeats the enemy.
Amen.
yeah, he
Mhm.
runs from it.
Good.
I was just curious about going back to that first portion of after Moses makes the covenant and sprinkles. It's in
Okay, so this is verse chapter 24.
24, and then going up with Aaron and Nadav and the 70 elders, and they saw the God of Israel and under his feet, so on. Yet he did not stretch out, God did not stretch his hand against. So I'm just interested what sort of midrashes there are on that in terms of.
So first thing, worship always involves food. Right? This
Yeah,
is
they ate and drank after.
they ate and drank. So there is this idea that that often when Jewish people get together for something, that there's food. You know, some people say, "Oh, Jews always eating food," but they get that. One, they get it from here. They also get it from Samuel as well. When they're going through the historical records, they always see that King Saul meets a prophet, and the first thing they do is they eat, and then the prophet says, "Now I will tell you the word of the Lord." Right? And so in Jewish Bible studies, you eat first, then study Bible. Right? Although here, you know, things happen and then you eat. So there is this interplay. Notice first of all that Moses sprinkles blood of the covenant. Right? It's not for sin.
No.
What are you saying, Aaron? Right? That Moses doesn't sprinkle the blood and says, "Okay, now you're all clean, your sins are taken away." It's the blood of the covenant. Notice Jesus's words. This is my blood of the new covenant, right? Which takes away sin. Right? And so the covenant is there as well as it's not just blood, it's the covenant is incredibly important, the making of this thing. And then here they go up and it literally says, okay, they saw God. That's what it literally says, which of course Jesus himself says no man has seen God. So how'd that happen? And plus Isaiah also has a vision of heaven, and he was when we were studying, he says he saw God. The way the midrash gets around it is they'll say, yeah, Aaron, but they only saw his feet, right? Or they only saw his back, or they only saw his hand, as though he has a body. But it seems to imply that he does. Is that for some reason, unbeknownst to all of us, this idea of inhabiting or having something resembling a body is not ungodly. Okay, if that makes sense. So you know, it's going to be impossible to say that under God's feet if God doesn't have any feet. So it's a strange one, you know. Now, of course, we can all race to theophanies, and I don't think you need to do that. There's no need to race to this is a pre-incarnation of Jesus and blah 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 blah. No need to run to that at all. That actually just opens up a whole lot more problems if you actually start to think about it. But they saw God, they they ate and they drank and they had fellowship, and it wasn't just our Moses, it was a group of them. Notice it's also Nadav and Avihu.
Who later, yeah.
Yeah, you know, like these are people that God, you know. Now, of course, if God knows the future, which he does, imagine that meal. Here, have a piece of this. See you soon. You know, yeah. It's not. Yeah, I like your sons. They're idiots, by the way, but I like your children. There is this idea that God lives in the moment. And remember, it's a paradox. Who are the only people on the planet that can actually hold paradox properly? It's people with faith. Right? The idea that A and B are true is a mathematical impossibility. Right? A is A, B is B. They can't be the same. And but in the faith world, they are. So God is God. He's a spirit. How does he have a body? He does. God knows the beginning from the end, but he also enjoys the moment. He lives inside the moment. And when you're living inside the moment, you don't know the future because you're in the moment. So suddenly you get phrases in the Hebrew Bible where God says, and now I know. You mean you didn't before? In that moment, God is himself learning. Now I know that you'll obey me. I've come down to see for myself. You mean you can't see from heaven? Why do you have to come down? You know, these kinds of this. It's a paradox. It's the tension where God knows everything, but he also does this. And that only works in faith communities where
that
you
also
can
speaks to the dwelling, the God wanting to not just be in the tabernacle, but be in the people. I was reminded of that with the communion prayer, you know, that after our sinful bodies are made clean by his body, that we may dwell in, that he may dwell in us and he may dwell in,
that partnership is that mystical tension paradox, which some liturgies are really good at holding on to. Yeah. All right.
Wonderful.
Have a look at verse 12. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and be there. I'll give you the tablets of stone, the Torah, and the commandments which I've written that you teach. Right? Is that partnership idea? God could teach you. Absolutely right. God could have taught all of Israel. There's no need for Moses. But there's something about the character of God. He delights. And he seems to know that this is actually the best way. Right? If this is the way God tells Moses must teach, that must by definition be the best way to communicate. If there was a better way, then by definition God would be doing that. Right? God wouldn't be doing second best. God would only be doing best. And so for some reason, this is the best way. You and I are bearers of the good news. Yes, God could send angels. Yes, he does do dreams for people. Yes, but not for everybody. Right? The best way is still a human to tell another human and to teach. So we got to get out there and teach.
And that goes back to the commission, the Great Commission.
It does, yeah.
That we all have, yeah.
Yeah. Teach them to obey. That's the commission. Go out and baptize, yes. Make disciples, yes. Teach to obey. And that's something we're not very good at. But just like Israel, they had the covenant and they broke it. We do exactly the same thing, right?
Mhm.
We do exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
So who wants to buy a slave? Anyone?
Mhm.
Okay, well, we'll pray, just closing this off, and then we can carry on for a bit. Stu, do you want to pray for us to close us out?
Sure.
Come in a bit more.
Better, I guess. Father, we bless you and we thank you for the breadth of teaching that Aaron brings to us from Scripture. We thank you for the training that you have put into him and for what is within his heart. Father, he's a blessing to each of us. We ask, Father, that the things that he has shared tonight and other nights and other mornings will reside deeply in our spirit and in our heart. Father, and if there's anything that's chaff, anything that's not of you, just take it away. We don't need it. So we close now and we say, thank you, Lord, that you are the great teacher. And thank you for your servants. In Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. All righty.